welcome to another edition of the Capital Press Club Legacy Podcast. This is episode number 8, and I'm Dr. Colin Campbell, your host. As usual, I'm really excited for our next guest to join us, and his name is Derek Kenny. Now, you have probably heard me mention his name before, and that's because Derek is usually behind the scenes helping to put all of this together. He's the engineer and the sound guy and the lighting guy and the camera guy, all wrapped up into one. But today I get to speak with him one-on-one about things in the zeitgeist. So we're just going to be talking about things that are happening in media, particularly in Black media across the nation, across the world. And we're going to do that from time to time because we do think that we need to put these issues out there. There needs to be a space for discussion, and it also helps us to generate more content a little bit more frequently, and it also helps us to flesh out some of these ideas and what's happening in the world today and what's happening in our media landscape. So Derek, what is going on? You know, one of the first things I wanted to start out with is on this date in Black history, the passing of Nina Simone, a songstress, a poet, just a great speaker. She died back in 2003. She would have been 70 years old. And she's famously known for saying, "This is the world that you've made for yourself. Now you have to live in it." Of course, she also had that song, Mississippi Goddamn, which we also know about the plight of enslaved Africans constantly working and trying to achieve civil rights, but being told that they needed to slow down in their aspiration to be treated equally as their peers across the country. So, do you remember anything about Nina Simone? I mean,
No,
I did heard a
but
lot.
I think part of our legacy is having us ask the question, what have we made? We're living now in, we have a few years behind us. We're now living in the present, or what used to be the future. We're living 50 years of hip hop. This is the future that we've helped to shape. We have Donald Trump, we have Bitcoin, we have AI. This is the future that I guess we've shaped over the last multitude of decades, scores of years. What does it look like? And even looking back at the year when she died in 2003, how would you assess where we are now with the lens of 20 years ago? Have we made some progress? What's going on?
Well, that's interesting you say that. Back in 2003, I remember I was at Black Entertainment Television working for BET Nightly News back in 2003. So to me, it was kind of a great time when we were talking about salient Black issues, things that were happening in our society that were dedicated to its own half an hour newscast. It was similar to CBS Evening News because they were our partners at the time, but it was news about Black society. Black people were the central characters in whatever was happening. We talked about issues in the zeitgeist, kind of like we're talking about right now, but they were given a level of salience and they weren't just juxtaposed next to other cultures and other issues. We were centered in those conversations. And back then it felt like we made significant progress. Today, we don't really have similar spaces. Of course, we have a lot more options. We have streaming. We do have other networks that are online, but do they have that same impact that BET Nightly News did? And I would argue that we do not, because of the fact that at BET, it seemed like we were churning this stuff out 5 days a week, every week, about Black content and what's happening within Black society. And I don't think we have that today. It's kind of mixed in with other news. I don't know. How would you assess it?
I don't know. I know we have the recent failure. I won't call it necessarily a total failure of the Black News Network. Was it the Black News channel?
News channel?
Yeah, and I don't know if we actually have as to your point, a focused, serious look at African American issues through the news lens with good journalistic integrity, with a voice of the African American diaspora. Do we have that? Even do we have that in social media? Is there like a blog somewhere? Is there like someone is doing a podcast where, of course, podcasts give an opportunity to try things that aren't necessarily profitable in the mainstream market or in media networks or whatever, to be able to do something that, because there's a need to overcome fake news, and particularly on a community or at a time where people are really relying on unreliable, I guess, genres of information like social media. I mean, is there something
Yeah,
out
I mean,
there?
unless you want to talk about Club Shay Shay or the Breakfast Club.
There is Roland Martin. Roland Martin
There's,
Unfiltered, I
oh
think, is
yeah,
a good
that's right. He
source.
does have his
Yeah,
digital show, doesn't he?
yep. He has a digital
Roland
show.
Martin
It's very
Unfiltered,
popular.
right?
Yep.
Uh, Shout out to Frat, of course, Roland
Right.
Martin there.
Of
But
course, dynamic
but
newsman. Hmm.
yeah, definitely. He does. He's probably the leading voice right now when it comes to Black news, I would say, to be
Yeah,
honest, right?
yeah.
Look at Revolt. Revolt might be under some turmoil, and we'll probably get into that in just a couple minutes. But
Really?
right? I can't say that we know exactly what's going to happen with that,
Right.
what the future of it is. We know that there's been a slight shakeup over at Revolt, obviously, but because of leadership. But as far as other spaces, other cogent spaces that talk about Black content, we really don't really have that many. And so it's, for many people out here, they talk about how contingent it is upon us to make those spaces or to augment those spaces because there is such a dearth. And of course, without coverage and without the proper address of these issues, they often can get swept under the rug, and that the Black experience can be minimized, or at the very least it could be just overgeneralized. And I think that brings harm to the society, where we know there are many nuances, there are a myriad of different uh, points of view and perspectives that should be shared, but with limited spaces in which to show them, or that get limited attention, it would almost seem that we're just kind of grouped into one monolith, which I know that many of us are very averse to think. So,
Yeah.
yeah. That's unfortunate. So yeah, to get back to your question, I don't know how much further we are along
Right.
from 2003. We also know Byron Allen has made a lot of effort to buy up stations. I don't know if that's translated necessarily into more content on
Hmm.
there that is Black focused, but we do know there's some potential, at least more potential than there was possibly in 2003, because he's made so many purchases,
Right.
and they've been considerable purchases as well. What he plans to do with them remains to be speculative, but we do know that he's bought several stations, and he's definitely tried to make an impact. So we'll see in the future. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess now that we're talking about the focus, or having a focused news program through the African American lens, we did
Mhm.
have a focused news magazine style show recently, right? Let's talk about that. And I guess disappointingly, that show is no longer, I guess, planned to be on the air. What's happening with King Charles?
With King Charles, that was taken off the air just a couple of weeks ago, right? That was a CNN show that came about after the CEO, Christopher Licht, left. Chris Licht was, of course, controversial just because of some of the decisions he made to let go of Don Lemon and other talent and make some shifts to the show that I think was to the channel or to the network, that was being criticized for being too leftist or too liberal. And so he wanted to bring what he believed was balance, got rid of some talent, made some programming changes. And then King Charles came out after he left. And it was supposed to be kind of this dichotomy between a revered and very well established and respected journalist, who was Gayle King, who's been around for years, and then Charles Barkley, who was a respected sports commentator, but who was also known for being kind of bold and being brash and not always subscribing to groupthink, regardless of ethnicity or race. So I think the plan or the thinking was to put those two together to get some realistic sound bites and realistic responses to some of the issues that are happening politically and socioeconomically in our country. But for some reason, it didn't translate well. I'm not exactly sure why. Ratings definitely weren't where they were supposed to be. It almost seemed like the rollout and planning of the show lasted longer than the actual show itself.
Yeah, yeah. Now, did Charles? Do you have a chance to watch any of the episodes?
I did watch some of them. I know that he would call people idiots, like people
Oh
who,
gosh.
if you were black and he supported the former president, he would call you, he would call you an idiot and things like that. And again, it was a space where he was supposed to offer an opinion, but one
Hmm.
could argue, did it alienate some of the viewers where they just said this is overly politicized, and so therefore they turned off the show. That's a possibility.
You know, let's talk about how we're looking at this, because Charles Barkley called someone an idiot on TNT during a sportscast or some type of popular sports show. That's pretty appropriate. Your audience is largely, I guess, male, largely influenced by you or impressed by you as a basketball player. What happens when he takes that same persona and that same approach to plain speaking to CNN, where it's a little bit more polished? People are expert communicators, not necessarily, not saying that he isn't, but he's a different type of communicator as opposed to like a Gayle King. How did that translate? How do you think people received him in that area on CNN?
Well, this is the thing. In journalism space, I don't know if you heard this a lot, DK, but a lot
Mhm.
of times in journalism space, we say that opinions are like our, excrement holes. Yeah, of course, the language is a little bit more colorful when we're in the newsroom, but yeah, that opinions are like excrement holes. Everyone has one. So
Mhm.
we would say this a lot when we would have to get what are called man on the street, MOS, where you just get the average person's opinion about something that that society or the community is talking about. Everybody has an opinion on something. No opinion is totally the same. And so I think when people watch Charles Barkley, they did they really value his opinion? Like you said, it was somebody who was an accomplished journalist, and then you had someone who was just known for giving his opinion, who was a former all-star basketball player. Was his opinion respected as much? Should it have been respected as much? And of course, you have people on both sides of that argument as well, just saying that, oh, he was just a basketball player. Why do I have to listen to his politics or his views on society or any kind of the part of being separated from society or isolated from society or being treated differently because of your background? Why should I listen to his opinion
Mhm.
if all he's known for is being a former basketball player? So you had that.
Yeah, and this might be one of those opportunities where we're developing this new format ourselves, where we have you, a seasoned journalist, and you have me, who's going to be a man on the street guy, or the excrement guy, but we also
No,
have the chance
you've got
for.
experience
Yeah,
doing this
well,
too.
we have
Yeah.
experience, yeah, with
Yeah.
communications and stuff, but we also have opportunity here, I think, doing a podcast, and then also going to have it on other platforms to let people, they listen to this and say, I watched the show, this is what I think. So if they do have an opportunity to watch the show, they have an opinion that they want to share. We're always listening. We're going to listen. We're going to share your feedback. We're going to try to do this thing live in the future, so that other people that may be informed and want to share their opinions, we want to make sure that they have a chance to share their voices as well. And of course, even man on the street, person on the computer, person on the cell phone, whatever, we may want to hear from them as well, because we don't have all the answers, but we want to talk about these things, right?
And we want to see what people out in the public are saying. That's why we get some of those opinions when we're out in the street, just pushing a microphone in someone's face, is because we want to know what the public is saying and what the opinions are, rather than just subscribing to an echo chamber or supporting confirmation bias, which I think
Mhm.
we're starting to see a lot more in the media too. And that is just seeking out sound bites or seeking out opinions that may substantiate or support a corporation's opinion on something or a news director's opinion on something. We just go through those circles. DK, I wanted to contextualize when we talk about a respected journalist when
Yeah.
it comes to Gayle King. Now, I don't know if this was the case in your grandparents' house, but my grandparents, on my dad's side, my paternal grandparents had a couple pictures set up in their dining room. One was of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.,
Hmm.
the other one was of Jesus, right? White Jesus, but it was Jesus. And
Hmm.
then you had John JFK. You had JFK
Yeah.
up there. And then you also had a picture of Gayle King. Gayle
Yeah.
King was also in the
Really?
dining. Yeah, believe it or not. And that's because I'm from Connecticut. Gayle King was an anchor at WFSB Channel
Right.
3, the
Okay.
CBS affiliate in Connecticut, for quite some time before she became nationally famous. But she was so revered and so highly regarded as a journalist and just a person of note within the state that my grandparents actually had a picture of Gayle King in their dining room or on the fancy credenza. they
and
had a picture of Gayle King with the
and
other pictures of notable people within our society,
and I think
including.
that that's really goes to this whole notion of trust. Like, I mean, it's probably a whole discussion. It's like an hour long discussion we probably could have one day. What do people
Mhm.
trust when it comes to media? Like, you're trusting on you get 1,000 posts on TikTok that you look at in one day, and how much of that content is the average person trusting to be actual, true, factual, based on facts, or have something other than entertainment value? And then, in the light of Trump and his fake news assessments, and even people like Elon Musk, who had issues with his interview with Don Lemon, how much do people trust news people now? And there was a time where if someone in the news said something, you knew for a fact that it was the gospel, or at least um, done with some type of journalistic integrity or approach. But not so much now, in light of what Fox News was sued successfully recently, because
Oh yeah,
they had an issue with presenting the facts.
of especially when it came to voting and the voting machines, right?
Hmm.
And how they covered the stories surrounding the voting machines and who was corrupting the vote or whatnot. They were sued and they lost. But I think that what a lot of people don't know is that Fox News is really still considered an entertainment platform more than it is considered a news platform, which I guess gives them
Oh
that
wow!
flexibility to present, yeah, to present information as news, but really to say, well, we don't always have to be 100% accurate because we're not just news, we're also entertainment, or we're an entertainment platform rather than just solely news. So it gives them that flexibility, or maybe, as some would say, that escape, which
Yeah.
allows them to do these certain things. I don't know how a lot of people feel about that, but I do realize that not a lot of people know that either. So they look at Fox and they say, okay, this is gospel or this is the news, when really they're just putting out commentary. And I think that a lot of people are also a little bit scrutinizing the news and questioning the motives of different platforms. When you do have someone like Elon Musk who says that he doesn't believe in censorship and that he's going to have an open platform where all opinions can be heard, but then he fires Don Lemon over coverage that he disagreed with or the way that the conversation went. So that seems to be a little bit hypocritical there.
Hmm.
And so you have people who are really thinking that they don't have a lot of trust and confidence in news anymore. So
Wow.
unfortunately.
That's a shame. That's interesting. And then
Hmm.
they will trust the local blogger, So,
It
um,
will.
you,
But I'll tell you what, one of the things that has been talked about is the amount of trust that Black Americans have
mm,
when it comes to watching news or getting their information from on television. And
oh,
Black Americans still get their news and information from television more than other ethnicities and races in the country, believe it or not, at least according to recent polling. Why do
wow.
you think that is? Yeah.
I don't know. I think we're very much children of America. I think we're African Americans. I think we're very much capitalists. We're very much consumers. We are very much a part of what makes America great, and that's those institutions like news, or like TV, traditional television, and when it comes to things like even the way we eat, I will say, and I'm not a doctor of anything when it comes to African American society or news. Okay, so if you want the expert opinion, that'll come from Colin. But there are things that we still adhere to, despite the changing tides of things. We still love soul food, despite the tide of health food options and things of that nature. Soul food's still a thing. Family's still a thing. The black church is still an institution that we adhere to. To I guess to a lesser degree these days, but it's still quite strong in our communities in terms of its influence and its leadership when it comes to social issues and things of that nature. So maybe it's because we're a bit more traditional when it comes to America or to our culture than some others are. There's a lot of I don't know a lot of and I don't know if that makes sense because I'm always saying that we're conservative in a way as African Americans, um, but we tend to be loyal, and I think TV has been something that we grew up with for years, and we passed on that viewership experience with our kids, and maybe they've picked it up and continue with it. And honestly, now with TV being more than just cable and more than just broadcast, there's a lot of opportunities for Black voices and Black creatives to get themselves on TV. You have Tubi, you have Hulu, you have Netflix, and there's a lot of yet to be discovered talent. Like years ago, some of these producers, directors, and actors, or entertainers, or even spokespeople wouldn't have had a chance to be on the big screen or the big screen in the living room. But now TV is much, much more. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We need to have a whole discussion. This is a whole panel discussion about why Black folks still watch TV. And then also, it goes back to a question earlier. If Black folks are still watching TV, why can't we have a successful Black African American focused news program or news network? Because we may be the one lone demographic that still is reachable and marketable to via TV, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. And just for clarification for people out there who are listening, I'm a doctor academically. I'm not Escalapian, like biological. So just so you know, but I do know how to do research, and I do research media and other issues like that. I do think that watching television is something familiar. It's something that, like you suggested, that we grew up with, that we know. And also, there are issues of access that not everyone has the same amount of access to the internet, or at least high speed internet, to download various forms of content and watch them or stream them live. You do have, again, trusted people that might be on television as well. So I think there are a number of issues why you see members of the Black population are kind of loyal to watching television rather than going online, streaming on various platforms, on various devices, mind you. It might be just easier. It might be what's available. It might be what's trusted in order to watch things on television. And I think that will change. I think that eventually that will change. It's just that I think at a rate of 38%, Black people still get their content from television. Now, that's still only 38%. It's not
Mm-hmm.
high.
Right.
I expect that number to dwindle,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it's still higher than white people or Asians or other groups that were studied for to get an outlook on TV watching habits or uh, platform watching habits.
I would love to find some more information about that, to find out, kind of get a deeper dive to find out why. Maybe it's another topic we could go out, and if someone out there has the answers, and they happen to hear this podcast, and you want to come out here and share your voice, we love to hear from you, especially if you're a trusted source. Okay, so
Exactly.
yeah.
It would be good to know. One of the other topics we were going to talk about is Black media too silent on what's going on with P. Diddy? And this is an article that I believe a woman by the name of Hannah Pfeiffer wrote out of Reckon, who said that there has been a noticeable silence coming from members of Black media when it comes to the coverage of what's going on with P. Diddy. And I wanted to throw that out to you, DK. What do you think? Are we not covering this story enough, or do we think there's a reason for that and a rationale behind it?
I don't think it has legs. I don't think it has legs. Well, there's a couple of reasons. I think. Well, one, I don't. If there's not enough substance there, in a lot of cases, if you have journalists, you're talking about journalists reporting on them, not someone that's social media, because people in social media, African American and others, have shared a lot of posts about Diddy and Diddy's parties and the allegations surrounding him, but they're only allegations. So journalists that have some integrity and that are worth their salt may have looked at it, and this is my guess. I'm not sure. My guess is that he looked at it and said, "There's not enough there to pursue it, other than just to drag him through the sand." And also, maybe Diddy doesn't have enough name value anymore to make this a newsworthy or a profitable proposition to make him the subject of a newscast or a deep dive into some type of investigative journalism. Now, I'm sure someone somewhere might be doing some investigating, But as of now, I don't think there's been anything where you can say concretely, other than knowing that he was at an airport where the FBI was at his house, or anything else is anecdotal that the FBI did look for him, and that there are all these stories that are so salacious that are being shared in social media. So social media, there are stories out there, and I don't want to, share them because I don't want people to say that, well, Derek said that, I've heard some stories and they're salacious, and they're like urban legends, like like he's the boogeyman, and they're like, wow, he's the boogeyman, and then you have all these other brand names surrounding him. So I don't know if there's been a request, in some cases there's a request to kind of keep it low key until you have enough substance to bring something forward, or maybe it's I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? You've heard some of the stories. I don't. Is it safe to say some of the stories, some of the allegations that he's facing?
Well, I think for journalists, and I think that's where the writer of this article may get it wrong, is that members of Black media, for the large part, are journalists, right? We
Mm-hmm.
are because we are a smaller population than say our white counterparts. We may not have as many people who are willing to just jump on a social media platform and just start gossiping, right? And just start uh, spreading information that may not be verified. In journalism, you're supposed to verify pieces of information. There should be a certain number of news values that a certain story should follow. Right now, they're just allegations. There's lots of speculation out there. There's lots of gossip out there, but is that enough information for actual journalists to follow up on? And I would say no. Journalists are looking for factual information to report, not just following up on gossip and conjecture. That's not the job of a journalist. So I think that if Diddy is eventually convicted of something, if he's guilty of something, or if there's evidence to lead to an arrest, then of course, yeah, there'll be more coverage about him. I do think that he's still his name still holds a certain amount of relevance, especially when it comes to the hip hop world. It's like I said, it was just recently he was divested of his interest in Revolt because of some of the scandals that have come up within the past year. So again, the stories about him are really only coming to the mainstream light within the past year. Maybe there were some rumblings in the hip hop industry for years. I understand that. But as far as being thrust into the mainstream to reach a level of salience as other headline news, I think that's only been within the past year when it comes to the issues that he's facing right now. And again, the investigation is ongoing, so there has been no arrest of Diddy. Family members, yes, but again, family members aren't really the attention grabbing the attention grabbing factors. It's really Diddy. So I think there needs to be something more relevant when it comes out regarding Diddy than just speculation, gossip, behind the scenes chatter,
Right.
and just an allegation of impropriety and not something that he actually did wrong. So really, it's kind of like a wait and see, and
Right.
that Black journalists are going on factual and moving on factual information and
Yeah.
not reporting on gossip.
As they should. As they should.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
Now you might want to highlight that something's trending, but you don't want to present information in such a way that is true. Especially we're going back to journalists are trusted news sources, especially for our community. And the one thing find disappointing in this, the timing of this, is that in the years past, the decades past, Diddy has been a pivotal figure in getting out the young vote. To get out the vote campaigns, Diddy has really been one of those people that was outspoken, and trying to help galvanize young voters. And I'm not sure if that's been his role of late in recent years, but certainly
Maybe
this
not.
year we can probably mark him as
Yeah,
absent in any type of
that's true.
campaigns that may be targeted towards younger voters. And then in a year where you're looking at inches, not feet when it comes to the distance between two candidates, that block of African American voters, it's I think every little bit matters. And I think it's I'm not alleging anything. I'm not saying that there's any type of
You
conspiracy.
may be starting
I'm
some
just
conspiracy
but I
theories,
but I will
DJ.
I will say this.
Right?
disappointing
Uh,
though. It's disappointing that some of the
yeah.
outspoken leaders that or outspoken people that would be able to advocate voting, getting out to vote for African Americans, may be silent. But I'm looking forward to seeing what type of campaigns we have out there, what type of pushes there are, because it's really important for people to get out and vote every year, but particularly presidential years. But local politics, get out to vote. Share your voice. I don't care who you vote for, even if you vote for certain people that have that proponents of wearing hats and sneakers. Get out there and vote. So I'll leave that there and I'll get off my soapbox.
No, I definitely think you're right. I think it's important for people to get out and vote. I think it's important for our society to get out and vote, even though I do realize that not everyone subscribes to that notion. There are a lot of people who believe that black members of black society should actually sit out the vote. So
Mm,
in order for uh, that position to be heard and felt by members of the predominant parties. Again, I think that's an individual decision.
yeah,
I guess personally, I'm more of the belief that if you are not offered a seat at the table, you're not, and you don't walk away from the table, you actually try to get more activated. What did Shirley Chisholm say? You bring a seat to the table, you get a
yep,
folding chair and bring it to the table, or something like that. And I feel like voting is sort of like that, where it's
right,
it's a small gesture of trying to be a part of the democratic process, but to
hmm
totally remove yourself from it, then all of these decisions are going to be made with your absence. And then do you really have a say in what decisions are being made? You definitely don't have as much influence. But again, that's me. And
yeah,
this is not to say who to vote for or who not. It's
hmm
just being part of the democratic process. And then, of course, staying apprised on media. I think that there has been an absence of just staying abreast of what's happening in media and
hmm
using our minds to discern factual information from not, knowing what's out there and what's not the truth. Also, understanding the relevance of certain stories that are put out there, if they should really be focused on or not. There are certain narratives that are being put out there that serve as distractions instead of what we as a society should definitely be focusing on. What do you think, DK?
yeah, yeah. I would say that voting is a God-given right. I mean, not a God-given right, but it's a right that we fought very hard for. Our forefathers have fought very hard for. And each time you vote, you let people know that my vote matters to me, and that when you're going out there, you're campaigning, and when you're making your decisions as a politician, know that I have, at least in some small measure, the potential to change the future with my vote. And I would say I would say vote. There's so many different ways to vote. You don't have to vote for the main couple parties. What's the gentleman's name that is running this year? That I know he will not win, but he's a scholarly brother. Doctor, gosh, who's running this year?
Cornell West.
Cornell West is running. So if you want to
Also,
protest,
another shout out to fraternity brother
there
Cornell
you go. Yeah,
West.
now if you want to do a protest vote and you say, you don't like Trump and you don't like the other, existing president, then you have
Joe Biden.
options. You can write in, you can
Right.
write in, you can write in Derek Kenny if you want to for the vote, but just go
Oh,
vote.
you'd like that, wouldn't you? Maybe
I
I'll
would love
write
it.
you
I would
in.
love Derek to get
DK
10
for the vote.
votes. Can I
I'll
get
write
10
you in. You
votes?
got
This is
one
a
vote.
campaign. Derek for president, but
There we
let's get
go.
10
To
votes.
be on the
10
record.
votes. Yeah, but there's definitely ways to make your voice heard, but be
Yeah.
counted. And when people know that this is a voting community, then the dollars that are spent for advertising, oftentimes in small and black media, like black newspapers and black news magazines and maybe black podcasts like this one, they get the dollars. It's important that you vote. So the more voters you have in an area, this is the money person in me. But if people are courting for your votes in a certain area, that really benefits the organizations that cater to you, the vehicles, the media vehicles that cater to you, the businesses that cater to you. A lot of those, even the cities where you are, become part of campaign trips because you have active voters, and so that benefits the economics in the area. So all those things play into the number of voters. But if no one's voting, if people can count you out, then they don't have to worry about swinging your vote or spending the millions of dollars in media buys that really
Right.
fuel a lot of
Into the
publications throughout the year,
consideration.
because they're like, okay, well, they're counted out. We don't have to worry about swinging their vote,
Right.
because
Right.
there's
And
people right now
we have to
that their
take into
job is to swing
consideration.
2% of a demographic from left to right or right to left,
Exactly.
and anyway, that's, yeah. But yeah, vote,
It's
but
very
vote
true. I
something.
think
I really believe people fought too hard for that, and people fight too hard to stop you. And if you
right,
play,
right. I
if
think
people
that
fight
if
hard to
we
stop you from doing something, there's value in it.
that's how you know the power and the value of
Hmm.
voting is when you have powers and forces that are trying to restrict that vote as well. But I think that again, this is something for Black media to really be vociferous about, to keep campaigning. I wouldn't say campaigning, but at least to keep mentioning and to raise awareness about various factors that could adversely affect our society and the ways that we can ameliorate them. We will be discussing a lot of those issues as we continue our CPC Legacy Podcast series. Again, I'm Dr. Colin Campbell, joined by Derek Kenny, and we will see you next time in episode 9. Thanks for joining us, and we hope that you tune into us in our return.